He didn't lack advice, he lacked discernment. Hey everybody, welcome to The Whole Truth, where I am taking you through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation without skipping anything. Today it is 2 Samuel chapter 17, and we'll cover the first 14 verses today as we see this guy Absalom has taken over the throne from David. David is on the run again in his life, and even though there are typologies that are happening there, where we're seeing pictures of Jesus, and there are applications that we're able to find from this, this really did happen. This is historical. Absalom, David's son, tried to take over the throne at a certain point in David's reign. And so David was reigning, and Absalom did take over for a short amount of time. And Absalom, in the middle of that, is trying to figure out how he can finalize this overthrow. How can he finalize what would seal the deal that Absalom is the king? Because even inside of what we'll read today, we see that there is still the knowledge, even the people who are firsthand at the overthrow, even those people recognize that David is still the king. So how can Absalom overthrow this? Well, so what Absalom does is he starts seeking advice. Okay, what can we do about the situation that my dad David is still considered the king? How can we make this thing final? And this is the advice that he's seeking. He seeks advice from these two different guys, and he gets advice from two different perspectives. And here's the deal. I'm telling you from the upfront so you can see what's coming. You can watch it play out firsthand, because as Absalom is seeking that advice, he gets good advice truthful advice, I should say, from two different perspectives. He'll get advice from this guy Ahithophel, a guy that is dedicated to Absalom, used to be dedicated to David, used to be an advisor for David, and everyone knows how wise Ahithophel is. And then he goes over to this other guy, Hushai, and he asks Hushai. Hushai is actually a spy for David, but Absalom doesn't fully see that he's a spy for David. And so he's asking advice of these two men to try to figure this out. But what's really happening? Well, I'll show you. It's a pretty cool chapter. It's 2 Samuel chapter 17. I hope you'll read along with me. Go grab your Bibles. And don't forget, I've got study notes available for you. They're over on Patreon. The best way to find that is to just head over to my website. Go over to thewholetruthbiblestudy.com, and then you can click on the study index. And when you click on the index, you will see all of the books that I've done so far, all of the chapters I've done. Well, you'll see all the books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Go down to 2 Samuel. It's at the bottom of the list because these are being put up in order. Click on the index, click on 2 Samuel, and then scroll down to the bottom, and you will see 2 Samuel 17, 1 through 14. Click on that one, and you'll see this video, you'll see this video, and under it, you'll see study notes. When you click on the study notes, it'll take you right to the Patreon page. I know that Patreon, there's a fee for Patreon, but you don't have to pay a fee for my notes. There's no fee for you to have Patreon. I mean, most people use Patreon to generate income, and I've tried that in the past, but the truth is I want people to have these notes. I want people to be in the Bible more than I want people paying for my Patreon subscription. So if you choose to support the channel, I would love that and I would appreciate that, but I really want most of all that you grab your Bible, go grab the study notes, and do the study with me. It's 2 Samuel chapter 17. Read this with me. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid, and all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king, and then I will bring back all the people to you when all return except the man whom you seek. All the people will be at peace." And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, "Now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he has to say too." And when Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. And so Hushai said to Absalom, the advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit or in some other place. And it will be when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. And therefore I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is in the sea, and a multitude for the multitude, and that you go to battle in person. And so we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And all of him and all of his men and all who are with him, there shall not be left not so much as one. Moreover, if he is withdrawn into a city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river until there is not one stone found there. And so Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel, for the Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. Ooh, there you go. There's the story. It's in what I see is in like two different sets of advice, and then the ending is what I've ended on in verse 14, where we've ended. That's the kind of point of the matter. So in the first 5 verses, what you see is that Absalom seeks advice from Ahithophel. Ahithophel is evidently pretty ruthless. I mean, if you were with us in the last chapter and what Ahithophel had advised Absalom to do with David's concubines, he's a ruthless and hard, and pretty much what I would even dare to say, he's demonstrating himself as an evil man. And here's his advice. Ahithophel says to Absalom, Absalom has taken over the throne and has control. He seized power for a short amount of time. And Ahithophel gives him the advice to say, here's the advice. Here's what we do with the situation with David. Let me and 12,000 men, we're going to go. We're going to find David. We're going to scare all the men that are with him off, because we're going to come at him for war. But our goal is not to kill any one of those people. We don't want to kill any one of those men who are with him, because we're not trying to start a civil war. I, Ahithophel, and the men who are with me, we will kill David and only David. And then we'll bring all these other men. We'll bring everybody back into Israel. What Ahithophel just said is strategically good advice. It's good advice in the sense of, like, it would, from a military standpoint, it would work. And scripturally, it's even like it's almost even confirmed that this advice would have worked. Ahithophel's plan would have come to be, but God's going to thwart that plan. This is what Ahithophel says, let me go and do this. Now, one of the things that's pointed out about this chapter, which I think is pretty insightful, is to say, notice that Ahithophel was going to go and do this himself. And then when you get into Hushai's advice, he says it the other way. So first we had Ahithophel, and he says, let me take 12,000 men, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to kill David myself. What's the problem with what he's saying? Then if it's good advice, what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that it's not God's will that Absalom be the king. That's the problem. And Absalom is not seeking something that is within God's will. And I just want to point out, how often do we make the same mistake? That we're pursuing something and pursuing something and pursuing something, and then we want to force God. We want to act like that by prayer. We can force God to do the thing that we want to do, even though the thing that we're wanting to do is outside of the will of God. You know, it happens so often that we are fighting for the wrong thing. That's the problem. The problem is not that Absalom received bad advice. It's not like Absalom thought he was receiving good advice, but it was actually bad advice, and that ended up causing his demise. No, what's causing his demise is that he is not seeking the will of God. The will of God is evident. There is no denying that God wanted David to be the king. Anyone should be able to look at the scenario and say, David is supposed to be the king. Have we forgotten about Goliath? Have we forgotten about David's battles? Have we forgotten about when David was going out and winning in all of these different wars? Have we forgotten the fact that this isn't the first time that David's been chased out of the kingdom? As a matter of fact, Absalom ought to consider for a moment he's actually kind of taking the role of Saul. Remember when Saul was king and Saul couldn't get it off his mind about David, and he was tormented by a spirit, and so Saul was chasing after David for a decade, wasting precious resources, chasing after David, even though he was the one who was on the throne. And it was evident that David was not going to fight Saul. Saul just couldn't leave it alone, and Saul kept coming after David over and over again. And it's almost like Absalom's about to take that same place. David ran. David took off. David left the throne. Absalom has seized the power. And instead of saying, okay, let's work on the people, let's unite the people. Nope. In his mind, I've got to defeat David. And by the way, I think that there's a point there on a spiritual level. How many do we see today? And maybe even you watching this video, how many do we see today struggling with this very same thing, where they fight against God? They fight. I'm not saying David was God. Don't misrepresent what I'm saying. What I'm saying is from a spiritual application. How many of us are not content enough to be on the throne of our own lives, but we actually, not we, I don't want this, but I'm saying it seems like culture, and it seems like many inside of the culture in some ways want to not only be the king of their own lives and rule their own life and be in control of their own destiny, if you will, or at least think that they are, but that's not enough. They want to destroy the king. They want to destroy God. They want to dethrone God. And my proof for that stands. I mean, just consider for a moment, things that you don't actually believe in, you don't try to disprove. You don't spend your time trying to disprove something. Let me give an example of this. I don't believe in a Sasquatch. I don't believe that there's a Bigfoot that really exists. Could there be a really hairy guy that lives in the mountains? Maybe. But my gut tells me that really hairy guy that lives in the mountains is not some sort of ape creature that's half man and half ape and, walks around, in the woods and, is barely seen by people every now and then. I think that between all of our technologies and photographs and, phones and whatever, I think that there would be way more evidence and that thing would have been captured by now if that was a real thing. I don't believe in a Sasquatch. I don't mind the idea of people, some cute folklore and, people make cute little stickers. And I remember the beef jerky commercials messing with Sasquatch, and they would take their watch and shine the light on Sasquatch's face and mess with them. I don't mind it. I'm not bothered by it, but I have nothing to disprove because it's not true. Like, I don't have to try to fight that. Why is it that those who disbelieve in God don't want it to be enough to just be like, nope, I don't believe, that's fine, moving on. But there's actually this idea of, no, we want to prove that God doesn't exist by saying, well, if God did exist, wouldn't he do this and wouldn't he do that, and blah, 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 blah. I hope you see my point, that the average atheist, if you will, and even the agnostic sometimes cannot leave it alone enough to say, oh, I don't believe in God and I'm the king in my life. But they almost want to prove that God isn't really who he says that he is. Well, here's Absalom. He got his first bit of advice from Ahithophel. And then in the next few verses, and moving from verses 16 through 13, we see that he calls in this guy Hushai. You might remember that Hushai is actually part of David's team. He is loyal to David. He's Team David. But he tried to follow David, and David sent him back in and said, no, go in, get close to Absalom, and then send word to me so that I might know what's going on. Well, Hushai, you're up. Here's what just happened. Hushai got invited into the room. That's pretty amazing that Hushai got invited into the room. When he first came in, the last time we saw Hushai, he was being questioned about his loyalty to David by Absalom and Ahithophel. But he had a clever enough answer, and he gave an answer, and here he is still inside of the kingdom. But now he gets invited into the conversation. Ahithophel gave good advice. Absalom saw it as good advice. The elders of Israel saw it as good advice. They were going to take Ahithophel's advice. Ahithophel was going to go out and in a strategic attack, in a laser-focused attack, go get David and kill David. Hushai says, ooh, I don't know if that's good advice. Here's why I say that I don't know if that's good advice. David and his men are valiant. 12,000 men is a lot of men, but David has taken on 12,000 men before and beat them. David's valiant. I mean, he is not a pushover. He's a tough dude. He's a man of war. And him and his men, I mean, you've ripped the kingdom away from them. That's like a bear that's had her cubs taken away. They're all probably already angry with you, not to mention the fact that David, being a man of war, is strategic. David is probably not sleeping with all the men. He's probably hidden away somewhere, and all the men are somewhere else. And if you go and attack all those men, you're going to tip David off to what you're trying to do. I have a better idea. Instead of going at him with 12,000 men that can be defeated, let's gather up all of Israel. And instead of Ahithophel, see, this is a distinction. Instead of Ahithophel being the one to go in and go kill him, you go to this battle yourself. Now, I don't know what Hushai's mindset is here, but I think I have an idea. And that's this. We're not told like Hushai's intent, Hushai thought Hushai was trying to do. You could say that he was trying to stall. You could say he was trying to buy time. I tend to think a little more like, I think that Hushai had faith in David. And Hushai was saying, don't send Ahithophel. Whoever goes, this is what would be in my head if I was Team David, and I am Team David. Then here's what would be in my head. Ahithophel can't actually kill David and take the throne in this way. I don't believe that could probably happen. I mean, it could from an earthly standpoint, but in the sense that this is not in the will of God, that David is the one who's supposed to be the king. It's interesting to me that Hushai says, you Absalom, son of David, you gather all the people up and you go yourself, and in the sight of all the people, you go and get David. And then if there's some city that's hiding David, then all of Israel will be with us. We'll bring ropes. We'll pull that city down and pull it into the river. He's playing on he's playing on Absalom's pride. I think that's true. But I also think it's to the extent of this. I think that Hushai thought, if we're going to send somebody, David's going to kill him, and then it's going to cause a civil war, whatever else. Why not, if we're going to make this happen, let's get everybody together, and then you, Absalom, you go after David, knowing that David would probably be able to take Absalom. That's what I think Hushai was doing, was putting Absalom in the driver's seat so that when the battle came to head, David would overtake Absalom. Now, it doesn't have to work out that way. It's not the way that it ends up turning out in the same. It's not exactly like that in the end. But that's not the point. We'll get to the rest of the chapter here and then the rest of the story as we move forward. But for right now, I want you to focus on the fact that he just received a second set of advice. Absalom got Ahithophel's advice. Absalom gets Hushai's advice. Now he says, I think your advice, Hushai, I think your advice is actually even better. It's even better. I think that probably has to do with his pride. He's had his pride played on. You go and take him. You be the one in the sight of all the people. Let it be you that's seen as you're the one that takes over from David. So here again there's truth. There's truth in what Hushai is saying. Why is it that Absalom is struggling to discern? Why is it that Absalom is fooled by that and goes, you know what, that's the better advice. Let me take that advice from Hushai rather than what Ahithophel has said. Even though Ahithophel is the trusted advisor, I mean, people even see him as like a prophet from the Lord. Why is it that Absalom's not able to discern this? Well, verse 14, this was actually the plan of God. This was actually the plan that God had all along, which is to overthrow Ahithophel's advice and to bring Absalom to the destruction of Absalom. It's truth. What Hushai said is truth. It's not like he lied. It's that Absalom lacked the discernment. Why does he lack the discernment, though? I mean, he had advisors. Where is the lack of discernment coming in? Are you ready for this? This is the crux of the whole matter. Because Absalom wasn't seeking the will of God. Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added unto you." You see, Absalom had his blinders on. He wanted to take the throne. I'm sure he thinks David's not fit for the throne. I'm sure he's angry at David for what happened to his sister and nothing was ever done about it. And there's all kinds of reasons that Absalom could have in his mind. But at the end of the day, Absalom doesn't think that David should be the king. He thinks that he should be the king, but the will of God is that David is the king. Notice even Ahithophel, I didn't point this out when I was reading it, but even Ahithophel said, "I'll only kill the king. I will only go after the king." He still referenced David as the king. There's still that part that recognizes everybody knows David is actually the king. As long as David is alive, David is actually the king, even though Absalom has set up his own throne and he's convinced people to come after him. So what's the problem here? Friends, the problem is not lack of advice. The problem is that he's not seeking the will of God. You know, you could be seeking advice from the wrong sources. You could even be seeking advice from the right sources, but the true matter, the crux of the matter in your life is not whether or not you're getting enough advice. The crux of the matter is, are you seeking first God? If you seek God, you seek His will above every other will, God's will above your will. What if God's will is that you don't have that throne? Are you willing to submit to that? You see, when I look at my scenario from what is God's will, not what do I want, but what is God's will? What is God taking us toward? What's He taking you toward? What's He taking your family towards? What's He taking your church toward? And am I willing to follow God? Am I willing to come under that? Am I willing to submit and be obedient to what God wants more than what I want? You see, true wisdom begins at the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But a fool is somebody who thinks that his own will is the will of God. A fool is one who sits in the counsel of sinners and listens to what someone evil would have to say because it sounds wise. It was foolish of Absalom to be willing to listen to Ahithophel from the beginning. I mean, let's not forget what Ahithophel just had him do just earlier for him in Absalom's life, let's call it even last week or last month, what he had him do. Ahithophel has proven himself to be a bad man, and yet Absalom seeks his advice. Why would Absalom even want to seek his advice? Because Absalom is seeking his own will, not God's will. So he's running around trying to find people who would agree with what he wants, and hence he lacks the discernment that can only come from the fear of the Lord, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope you come back tomorrow as we finish up 2 Samuel chapter 17. I'll see you then.